at 99 Records with his brother, another iconic record label. And Bill, happy to have you on again. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, thank you. I reviewed our part one as well as I watched the
Okay.
interview you did with Tim Summers. So it's like,
Oh, okay.
so I'm
And
all
that was
primed and ready to go.
okay. Go ahead. Well, we'll continue on now with your story. So where we left off.
So we left off where rock and roll experimentation of the late '60s turned into being more corporate rock and roll and
Right.
lacking imagination and innovation. And so, I had to go about exploring new music because the rock and roll wasn't doing it for me anymore. But in a lot of ways, but anyway, so I moved to the city from Brooklyn to an apartment on the Upper West Side near Central Park with my brother. And my brother was 2 years older than me, and still is.
Okay.
And
Okay. Okay.
and he was like, well, Bill is like, I know you're looking to get an apartment, but maybe if we look together, a little old. I'm 21, you're 19, and might be a little difficult signing a lease and all that. So he
Right.
convinced me to go in with him and get an apartment together.
Oh,
So that was
okay.
that was beginning of really getting to know the world outside of Brooklyn.
Okay.
Uh, I kind of joke with people that I moved to Manhattan as soon as I was able to crawl across the Brooklyn Bridge.
How about that?
For all the culture and the excitement in the city, there were like two female prostitutes living next door to us in the
Oh, that's
apartment
funny.
building, and it was like, and instead of being afraid of that, we were like, well, we've landed.
No, I'm sure.
We've come of age of sorts. It's like, so that opened up my horizons even greater than whatever Brooklyn could do for me, and my going to rock festivals and going to as I mentioned, the Paramount Theater in
Right.
Manhattan and the Brooklyn Fox to see rock and roll shows and all that. But yeah, so very soon after I moved to the city, I realized that I knew there was something happening in the gay movement. That there
Mm,
was all this gay activism happening, and I didn't
right.
know where, how, what, whatever. But I was thinking, okay, I think I need to pay my dues and get
Okay.
involved. So I, sought out the Gay Activists Alliance, and back in 1971, and that became a vehicle to meet a lot of very creative. The Gay Activists Alliance was the activist group after Stonewall. A lot of people think Gay Liberation Front, but it was actually GAA that
Okay.
had a formal structure as an activist group with a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. Uh, we even had a parliamentarian
Oh, how about
to
that?
make sure the meetings were run well. We had like 15 committees, and I got involved with the community relations committee and going out to colleges and high schools, speaking about the gay movement to students throughout the city.
Hmm.
And the Gay Activist Alliance was, as I may have just mentioned, we had about 15 very active committees. We spoke to between 1,000 to 3,000 students a week, every week
Wow. There's a
throughout the
lot of
school
that.
system. So yeah,
Hmm.
so that you know, I was working for a bank at the time, and I became part of the debating team of the bank that I worked for.
Oh,
So
okay.
that gave me, helped me develop my speaking skills.
Right.
And then in GAA, it was called upon to do that
Hmm.
quite a bit,
Okay.
and so that was amazing. But the on the musical side of the Gay Actors Alliance, the Saturday night dances at the Firehouse at 99 Worcester Street in Soho
Okay.
were the place to go to dance in New York City.
How about that? And there you
You
go,
know,
9-9, right? Another 9
Yeah,
9.
yeah, 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 yeah. 9 Worcester, 9 McDougal. Right, exactly. I didn't never even thought that never occurred to me to just now. Thank you, Dennis.
Sure.
But anyway, so the Saturday night dances were the beginning of the transition uh, from soul music to funk and disco.
Okay.
People like Herbie Hancock was a big transition between jazz and dance music, um, and so it didn't matter whether you were gay or straight. The Firehouse Saturday Night Dances were the place to go, and those Firehouse dances, we charged $2 at the door,
Okay.
and that included all the beer, soda, soft drinks, cookies, whatever. On a Saturday night, and if you couldn't afford the
Hmm.
$2, you could work for a half hour serving the beer from these kegs,
Oh,
and
wow. Huh.
that funded the organization. With that modest cover
Hmm.
charge at the door, and so. And then again, some of the drag queens were like, well, that's an exclusive door policy, which they didn't like, that they had to pay
Right,
two
right.
dollars or work. So they would set up on the street, on the cobblestone streets on Worcester Street with a
Right.
boombox and have alternative dances in the middle of the street. So you had the
Wow.
dancers in the street and you had the dancers inside the main floor of the old abandoned firehouse.
What
So,
were the artists that that they were playing in those clubs? Who were really
uh,
popular?
Well, to me, I mean, Herbie Hancock's Headhunters stood out as being one of those transition things. But
Right.
it was a lot of soul music, and it was a lot of
Okay.
black music, and but at the same time, being the rebel that I was or was becoming or whatever, me and my friends were more into rock and glam rock. T
Right.
Rex and the Stones and Rod Stewart and the Faces and whatever. So we started doing alternative dances on Friday nights.
Oh, okay.
So those alternative dances, we played the music that we felt we wanted to play, and that was the beginning of my DJing.
Oh, how about that? I didn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
and through GAA, I got to know a lot of very amazing gay activists and very creative people. Like Vito Russo, who was
Hmm.
the film director for MoMA and
Oh,
was
wow.
very involved with bringing alternative films and early gay cinema to the firehouse on Worcester Street. So and those things we'd see the films and we'd talk about them. We'd figure out what's going on. But those so the firehouse was the headquarters of the major gay activist organization at the time,
Okay.
but it was also a cultural institution. It was the first LGBT community center
Oh,
anywhere in the
wow.
United States.
How
So
about that?
yeah, so the
Hmm.
Saturday night dances they became a template for dances that were going on in Chicago and around the U.S. where disco was becoming a new thing.
Hmm.
And then the alternative dances was where I got my foot in the door in terms of doing some DJing, and I didn't really see that as a career. But
Hmm.
meeting so many great people who are seriously into progressive music. We talked a little bit about Gong and Hatfield in the North and the
Oh, yeah.
Canterbury bands toward the end of our last interview,
Right.
and but Mick Ortiz was a lead singer in an amateur band and guitarist, and the two of us became very, very close friends, and kind of like boyfriends, but not, just
Right.
being together. And so it was through him that I met Robert Mogerliff.
Okay.
Do you know that name?
No, who is that? That name is not
Robert.
familiar.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. Tonto's Expanding Headband.
Oh yeah, okay.
So Tonto's Expanding Headband was one of the pioneering synthesizer group that was all electronic instruments,
Hmm.
and he built a contraption that you get inside of,
How about that?
like a DeLorean car or something like
Right,
that,
right.
and with all the equipment and synthesizers hooked up and working together. And he did that one album, Tonto's Expanding Headband,
Right, I
and
know that album. Right.
so I got to meet Robert, and recently I found him on Facebook and we became friends and we started chatting, and it was like, oh
Hmm.
well, great to hear he's still alive. He's in his
Yeah.
mid 80s at this point,
Wow.
but he was an influence on me, and the I he lived near Central Park, and that's where me and my brother moved to the city on 69th and Broadway, two
Okay.
blocks west of Central Park. And I remember going over to Robert's large studio apartment that he had,
Right.
which had a grand piano in the living room.
Oh
And he
wow.
had these amazing speaker setups and master tape playback equipment in the
Oh
apartment.
really? Wow.
Yeah. And I remember one afternoon we just were kicking around Central Park, and Mick said, let's go over and visit Robert. And we went over to Robert's place, and he played us something that blew us away:
Hmm.
the original master tapes of Stevie Wonder's Talking Book album.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Man,
And
that's amazing.
Robert produced the album and programmed all the synths for Stevie, and
Okay.
and that was kind of the end of the Stevie Wonder's little Stevie Wonder, you
Yeah,
know,
I'm sure.
and the more
Wow.
grown up sound that was Talking Book, and the few albums that came out after that, that completely changed the concept of what you could do with music.
Oh
you
yeah.
know I mean, that was, he had Jeff Beck on the album
Hmm.
playing guitar. And so listening to that in the summer of 1972, from the master tapes,
Oh
through a
boy.
brilliant sound system, was like, whoa.
Yeah, that.
I mean, me and my friends Mick and I, and the others who were there, we loved Jeff Beck at that
Oh, of
point,
course.
and one of the greatest guitarists ever. And But hearing that album was just totally amazing, and
I
I'm
imagine.
I'm glad to know that Robert Mogerliff is still alive in his mid to upper 80s at this point. His birthday was just the other day,
Oh
so
boy. Wow.
yeah, yeah, and he's looking to do some more producing. So if you know someone who's looking for someone to program synths or whatever,
He's still
you
doing
might want
that.
to look him
Wow.
up.
That's
He's
fantastic.
still doing it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and so I'll give you his contact information. You could
Yeah,
maybe
that would be
reach out
great.
to him
I'd love to
because
get in
he'd be a
touch
great
with him.
interview.
I'm sure he would be. Yeah, I want to definitely talk to him.
Yeah, because he not only did Talking Book, he did the next two or three albums with Stevie Wonder, as well as many other artists that he worked with.
Oh wow. I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, so that was those early days of the early '70s. Being a very active member of GAA, and then and doing some DJing, but the and living so close to Central Park, we were spending a lot of time in Central Park. And me and my friends, I had, a gang of friends who are black, white, straight, gay,
Right.
young, old, whatever. And we had a rock opposite the boathouse in Central Park. And that was our
Hmm.
rock. That was our territory. You could only hang out
Got it.
there if you were in
How
our
about
group.
that?
So I could go there. I could go to this rock near the boathouse, which was near the Ramble, which was the gay cruising area,
Right.
and I could go to this area by the boathouse and always run into friends. Whatever time of
Hmm.
the day or whatever day of the week or night or whatever, and so that was really fantastic to have that kind of input and communication
Yeah.
with a lot of amazing people.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Go ahead.
But
Wow.
back then we had the Schaefer Music Festival in Central Park,
Oh, that's right.
which was at the Wallman skating rink.
Oh man, you must have saw a lot of
And
great shows.
So it was like $2.50 for orchestra seats, $1.75 if you wanted to sit all the way in the back, and in the bleacher kind of seats or whatever. And then if you couldn't afford the 250 or the concert was sold out, you could sit on the hill and watch and get a little bit of view of the show
Right.
from outside without paying to get in. So I saw lots of amazing shows there. And one of the shows that really stood out for me was uh, a concert of Todd Rundgren.
Oh, okay.
Todd
Yeah, he's
Todd
incredible.
Rundgren and Utopia.
Oh, I
And
remember them.
yeah. And for the first 90 minutes of the show, he sat at a grand piano on the stage with no other accompaniment, and he had Hall and Oates and Laura Nero doing background vocals, standing around the piano with him for like 90
Oh
minutes.
man,
Yeah,
that's something.
absolutely,
I think
absolutely
I
brilliant.
think Roger Powell was in the band at that time. He was a great keyboardist, wasn't he, in Utopia?
I think so. I
Oh
think so.
yeah. Wow, what a
Yeah.
concert.
Yeah. Then there was an intermission. Then he came back on with Utopia, and then for the encore, since I think it was his birthday,
Right.
he did he had fireworks go off over the festival, and I can remember to this day him lying on his back on the stage playing guitar, improvising with the fireworks.
Oh man, that must have been incredible.
Yeah. I mean, he was in ecstasy. He was just loving it as much as we were all loving it. So it's like one of many great shows there. I saw Average White Band there. I saw Peter Frampton there. I saw a lot of really, you know, a lot of amazing shows.
Hmm.
But that was the only time I think I saw Laurie Nero
Oh
live.
really? Okay.
Yeah. But it was just really lovely. I don't know if that's ever been released or on YouTube or whatever, but hopefully the recording of that show somewhere.
Yeah, maybe they recorded some of those. I gotta look that up because that was really a great period of music too. That '70s period. I mean, everyone was so creative.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was kind of like after after the '60s, and a lot of rock and roll became more corporate oriented and big money, but there was still people, people like Peter Frampton were like kind of a guilty pleasure, because
Right.
it was pop rock, but
Yep.
he was very handsome. And
Yep.
he
True.
actually had his chops. He could play guitar really well. So
Yep.
it's like,
True.
but that was like kind of, always a balance between what was mainstream and what was alternative,
Right.
for
Right.
me,
Okay.
and it still is to this day.
So after that, what happened? So that was that period. Then what happened in the mid '70s on, like the late '70s, mid '70s period?
Well, yeah, I actually have the only year I ever kept a diary was 1975.
Right.
And in that diary is like every page, there were like two or three shows that me and my friends were going to.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And it was the beginning of the FM radio.
Okay.
So you would have well, the FM radio became uh, you know it was the first audiophile sounds coming
Right.
out of a radio as opposed to AM radio, which is more transistor radio. And so, going back to the '60s, late '60s, when FM started, you would have DJs play an entire album nonstop, or play an
Right.
entire side of an album, as well as would do live concerts like from the Bottom Line or whatever. I remember there was an early when Elton John first started out, his first album, WNEW-FM did a live
Oh, of
show,
course.
and it's like, so it was really exciting to listen to that stuff live
Right. Well,
through your,
I was in high school at the time. I remember Allison Steele, the Nightbird. And I remember when she played Mother Russia in its entirety, the Renaissance song, and that was incredible. Yeah, they were playing albums. It was
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
great
yeah. The
period.
17 minutes in the Gala de Vida.
Yep, there you go. That's true. You're right.
And which was a kind of a total flipping from the concept of like 2.5 minute songs that were being played on top 40 radio.
Right, exactly. Well,
So
that's what
yeah, so
people wanted to hear too. So it was great that that was a great format.
yeah, yeah. So by around 1974, I kind of lost interest in rock music, uh, traditional rock music or progressive rock music or whatever, and got into more progressive rock music with the bands I know you love as well from
Right. Yep.
Canterbury, England.
Oh yeah. Fantastic music.
And Mick Ortiz was he was a major influence, because me and him, we listened to music, day and night together, and smoking pot and rolling joints
Yeah.
on the album covers and all that. And it's like, uh, but, and I got to meet, through Mick, I got to meet Michael Palmgarden, who was one of the guitarists in 8-Eyed Spy later on.
Oh yeah, I remember them. Yep.
And another guitarist named Clem. I'm drawing a blank on Clem's last name, but he was an amazing guitarist. And we all jammed together as well. It's like I never really considered myself much of a guitarist, but I was always playing, and so and it was really great knowing all those people.
I
Uh,
imagine.
and
I can.
we became big fans of everything on ECM Records.
Oh, I remember that label. Right.
Yeah, I mean, of the first 150 albums, they were all like ECM 001, ECM 002. Of the first 150, I had at least 125 of them in my collection
Wow.
because I'm
That.
buying. I mean, it was Anthony Braxton, it was Keith Jarrett, it was Pat Metheny, all these amazing avant-garde jazz musicians, and and Mick and Clem and Michael, we were both and other friends of ours were heavily into those groups.
Now, did you go to CBGBs at all in the mid '70s or Max's to see bands?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got very much into the avant-garde jazz scene, and we'd go to see Anthony Braxton, and me and like three or four friends, and there'd be about 70 people in a loft down in Soho, for a
Wow.
concert of his, and by after intermission there'd be about 35, and by the end of the show it was just me and my friends
Oh man.
because it was just it was just the charts were just off the wall, progressive jazz that had never been done before, and just seeing the notations of how he charted stuff was astounding, and the other musicians from that era, but so we were kind of a core of progressive avant-garde jazz fans, as well as we were a core of the Canterbury fans in New York.
Wow. How about
Not
that?
many people in New York were into the Canterbury bands,
No,
but
no. I loved them. They were great.
soft
Those bands.
from the first Soft Machine album.
Yep.
I think there was Soft Machine 1, there was Soft Machine 2, 3. They were I think 3 was called Third,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
they were all numbers, and it went up to number 8, I think.
Wow. Yeah, I loved Robert Wyatt's playing. His drumming was
Brilliant,
sensational. His voice. Yeah, he was
brilliant.
really
So I think
good.
it was Robert Wyatt that I got into more of the Canterbury sounds,
Oh, okay.
because Robert Wyatt started after he had the accident where he couldn't drum anymore, and he started just playing keyboards and singing. He was working with people like Gong and Hatfield North and all of that.
Yeah, that was quite a scene that was going on there at that in that part of England. It's like almost like the scene that was going on in New York in the early '80s, late '70s. That was a whole uh, change of music.
Well,
What happened?
it was a whole sort of, it was a very different sort of sensibility. Where the Canterbury bands were very much about love and caring and understanding who we are as people, and and questioning what life is all about, and
Right.
how uh, kind of love is the answer kind of thing,
Yeah.
and and that's very different than the New York of the 80's, you know
Oh
uh,
yeah.
but so, and I didn't really get to see many of those bands live, but I mean, some of the bands that I did see, like Gentle Giant and early Genesis, and early Peter Gabriel, were very much influenced by the Canterbury scene.
Oh, I'm sure. I heard
You
Macy
know,
Hall. I think the opening act was Genesis when they first came over, and Lou Reed was the headliner. So you imagine that
okay,
show. That must have been
yeah,
quite unusual. But Bob Ezrin talked about that. I heard an interview by him talking that he was at
okay.
that show.
I did see Peter Gabriel the first time he performed live in New York,
Oh, okay.
when he went solo, and and I had seen Genesis when he was the front man of the group before Phil Collins took over,
I wish I saw
and
that.
yeah, and it was at the Academy of Music on 14th Street, which later became the Palladium,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so and the Ramones opened for him,
Oh, that's amazing. Imagine
so
that.
it's like I was not really a huge Ramones fan by any means, but they were around.
Right, right.
Kind of like, in the later 70's, Red Hot Chili Peppers were around, but like me and my friends weren't necessarily big fans of them. We were
Now,
thought,
now, now, what was Ed listening to at this point? Was he influenced by the same music or something different?
well, around that time, Ed and I weren't in regular contact,
Okay,
by the mid 70's, because we lived together through 1974 or so
right.
on the Upper West Side. And so I don't know what he was listening to at that time, but
Mm.
also at the time that where I was listening to the Canterbury bands and early Genesis and Gentle Giant, um, me and my friends also started going to CBGBs quite a bit,
Okay.
and we fell in love with Patti Smith.
Oh, about that, I imagine.
And Patty would play CBGBs like for 3 months, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of thing, and she would
Wow,
do two
four
shows a
shows,
night.
four
Yeah,
nights in a row. How about that?
something like
Wow.
that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I may be somewhat mistaken, but it's like I know she played there a lot,
Mm.
and it was at least 3 nights a week or something like that for a while, for a period of time. And me and my friends would be there for the early show and the late show every night.
What were those shows like? I mean, was it crowded? Was there a real uh, buzz about her?
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like she initially it was just her and Lenny Kaye on guitar and Richard Soul on upright piano,
Okay.
not a synth or anything like that, but an upright piano, and they would it was very improvisational what she would
Oh,
do, because she would get in the stream of consciousness. There were songs that she sang by
right.
all means, but a lot of it she would just go off, in a stream of poetic, consciousness that was
Hmm.
like they're just working with her and going. Richard and Lenny were just keeping up with her and providing her with that background to
Hmm.
and the experimentation. It was like a three-piece jazz group,
How
really.
about that? I didn't know that.
But more rock, but it's like,
Right.
but it was improvisational, and it being improvisational made it very much like jazz. And she was in a relationship with Tom Verlaine, who was the lead singer of Television and
Oh, yeah,
guitarist.
right.
in television, Richard Lloyd, and they would open for Patty every show.
Oh, television would?
So it was a double bill,
Oh,
television and
that was
Patti Smith.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
She was. I mean, which that it we of all the groups that played CBs, it was television and Patti Smith for me. You know,
Okay.
and my friends. You know, I mean, I could care less about the Ramones. I could care less about Talking Heads.
Okay.
You know, because I mean, to me, uh, you know, I was like, you know, that first early Talking Heads album was like, you know, had songs on there. You know, I think there was a song called "Don't Worry About the Government,"
Yeah.
and I was like, you know, it's like what?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, the reverse of the concept of punk and whatever, and so yeah, so Patty was just amazing, and I was working at a bank at the time, and I wound up working the midnight shift, so I could go see Patty and then go to work. And if
Oh,
the show
okay.
went a little over late, I'd show up late for work, you know.
Oh, that's great. Wow,
But
I can imagine those shows. What about Blondie? Did you see that band? Did you like them?
yeah, 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 yeah. And you know, and later on, Blondie hung out at Club Hurrah where I DJ'd, and
Oh,
Hurrah
okay.
was their favorite hangout spot.
How about that?
Yeah, yeah. But CB's was great, and like you know, we went wherever Patty played, whether it was Max's Kansas City or she was playing at a college. She did these rock and Rambo shows that were, you know, rock and Rambo poetry. And so, and we would take people. I remember taking one friend of mine who was a hairstylist. I remember taking him to see Patty one night, and it was very, very apropos of what it was like for someone seeing Patti Smith for the first time. The jaw just dropped.
I never knew about the improv. That I always thought she just did the songs and that was it, but I didn't realize it went into this whole improv.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And
Hmm.
and then I wound up dating Richard Soul, her pianist.
How about
And
that?
yeah, yeah. And I remember one night we, you know, he was very sweet guy. He died in the 80s, but
Hmm.
I don't quite know what. I don't think it was HIV, but
Hmm.
he died early on. But
Oh, that's a shame.
he was a very sweet person, you know,
Hmm.
very different than Patty in a way, very different than Lenny Kaye, but a very romantic, very sweet person. I remember lying in bed with him in his apartment, and uh, when I left, he gave me a tape of Patty's first album on
How
cassette
about that?
before it came out. So it was kind of like
Oh,
hearing
that
Talking Book for the first time months before it
man.
came out, and then hearing the first Patti Smith album. You
Wow.
know,
Now, did
I
you go to
probably
the any practices at all? To see him practice, like at a rehearsal
I don't
session?
remember. I don't remember going to any practice sessions with
Right.
Patti Smith.
Okay.
I wasn't in on that level, you know, with the group, but Mick and I will often go to rehearsal studios and play,
Oh,
and
okay.
and I remember he was playing with James Blood Ulma,
Oh, yeah. I know him.
and I remember I was at it wasn't a recording session, it was like a practice session in a rehearsal studio, and uh, James, like, his drummer walked out
Oh, he
for some
did.
reason.
Huh.
And he just looked at me. He said, "You play drums?" I said, "A little bit." He said, "You're playing."
Oh, how about that? That's funny.
So it's like, you know, I remember like really doing a lot of flourishes and stuff like that. And he was like, "No, keep it basic."
There you go.
I wasn't a drummer. It's like, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, cool it, Bill, cool it. You know, you're not doing solos,
How
you know.
about that?
But anyway, so yeah, I mean, it was great being in and out of studios and with, you know, with Mick and his bands, and Michael Palmgarden, who's still around, who is a
Hmm.
member of 8 Eyed Spy and played with Lydia
Right.
Lunch.
Right.
And actually, Pat Irwin is playing tonight
Oh, he is.
at,
Okay.
at Bowery Electric, opening for Love of Life Orchestra.
I interviewed Peter Gordon, and I'm supposed to hopefully do Pat Irwin. He's quite a talent.
Yes,
Both of
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. I've heard his albums with the group he calls Sus,
I haven't heard that.
and yeah, yeah, it's really brilliant atmospheric music. And I had hip surgery last May. I think I'm sure
Right. I
you
remember
kind of
that.
helped me out a little bit. Uh, but I remember I got turned on by Pat to his album, one of his Sus albums, and it's very tranquil, it's very peaceful, it's very beautiful. I remember listening to it as I was on a bus leaving from my orthopedic surgeon's office,
Oh,
and
wow.
it was his music that helped get me through that initial after surgery kind of post surgery recovery.
He's
Thank
worked
you,
on
Pat
he's
Irwin.
he's worked on television shows. He's worked at soundtracks.
Some
I
films, I
didn't really.
think. Yeah,
Yeah, I had what an
yeah, yeah,
extensive career. It's
yeah, yeah.
fascinating.
And I just noticed, I may mention it to you that ESG is in a TV commercial now.
Oh, they are.
It's a TV commercial that shows breakdancing with black dancers and talking about the South Bronx. And it's a hospital in the Bronx that is doing cancer research. And this is a way of doing their outreach for their cancer studies and their cancer care. And it opens up with an ESG song.
Oh, wow.
And it's in heavy rotation on TV right now. So it's like, if I see it, I'm gonna record it and I'll send you the video of it because it's quite amazing
Well, you
that
know
they're getting that kind of.
that Victor Monteval from I guess the Bronx. He one of his favorite songs he was practicing to was Cavern, which was pretty
Okay.
exciting. So we were hoping maybe he was going to use it in the Olympics, but he didn't. But that's something. ESG. Wow.
Yeah.
They
You,
still
you,
keep.
you, yeah. Cavern is in the film 25th Hour.
Oh yeah. And we're in Chef, the movie Chef,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we got in a Samsung commercial a few years back. So it pops up when we least expect it. Those songs seem to never die. Those ESG, our songs, it's quite
Well,
amazing.
yeah. I mean, there's the I'll tell you a little anecdote about Cavern. It's like I went to a screening, a pre-screening before the release of 25th Hour,
Right,
where Spike Lee was there, and it was a packed theater, a large theater,
right.
and uh, it was mostly a black audience that was there, uh, and out of the blue, there's like a club scene, and Cavern comes on,
Ah,
and everyone in the theater jumped to their feet and started dancing,
how about that?
and I was like, "Whoa!" I mean, it blew me because it came out of nowhere. It's like it's a very tense, traumatic scene about a drug dealer who's going to jail and
Right.
whatever, and he's got 25 hours of freedom before he has to go to jail, blah blah blah. And so one of the things he does is goes to this club, and there's Liquid, and
How about
the
that?
entire theater jumped to their feet and started dancing aggressively. It was amazing.
I mean, you really think of New York when you hear that song. I don't know, for me anyway, I just had that vibe of being in the city back then. It never loses that vibe. That's what it is. It's got the beat. It just puts you in that mood. That's why it seems like it's a kind of like a timeless piece, like with ESG's some of their songs.
Well, you were the I've often referred to Dennis Young as the hardest working percussionist in show business.
Oh, thank you. That's
Because like I mean, you
the
were like kicking it like crazy. It's
I
like
know. It
the
was
energy
intense.
level you brought to the stage was just like, I mean, can you still do that?
I don't know that like that. I mean, but the
I
band
mean,
was
how
intense.
old were you at the time?
21, I think 22, 23 when we
Yeah,
started out. But I was playing drums before that, really intense. You know, I
yeah.
really wanted to be a prog drummer. That was my dream,
Okay.
getting an original prog band, because I had a big drum set, and there's no way I ever thought I'd be in Liquid Liquid playing marimba. I mean, I thought marimba was just something I'd add on to like songs. I never really
But
thought of it.
how many pieces of equipment were you banging on?
At that time, only a couple cymbals, a steel drum, a little fake steel drum from the islands. You know, not really a real steel drum. I think it was just a gift, one of those gift steel drums, and then that's pretty much it. And rototoms.
Because I
And
equated it almost your playing was almost equivalent to like one of those prog rock bands like Yes with a million keyboards.
right,
It seemed like you had a million things all around you that you were like,
I wish I did,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I
I
have a
mean, you made it more impressive than maybe it actually was in some ways in terms of the number of
yeah.
things you had working.
I
You
didn't have a
know,
lot. I think I had three or four cymbals. That's it. And then rototoms, and that little cowbell, and then I had that little steel drum and the marimba. That was it. The start of
right,
the band. I didn't maybe a snare drum, but the reunion shows, I think I must have had about 10 cymbals. I had a
right,
lot of cymbals for that. But yeah, it was. But the band was tense. We were an intense group. It just we just played that way. So it required a lot of physical stamina. Put it this way.
yeah, yeah. So the toward the late set. I mean, after 75, after 76 or so, for a year or
Right.
two, I completely dropped out of the music. Oops, lost.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I completely dropped out of the music scene for a little bit, and uh, you know, and disco became like very big. You know, in 76, 77, and but then you know, Sex Pistols and the Clash and Stiff Little Fingers, you know,
Oh yeah.
began to breathe new life into music again, and but I was not so completely aware of it because you know after Patty and the avant-garde jazz, um, I was very happily in love with this guy, and we were living together on the Upper East Side,
Right.
uh, and then my brother came to me and it's like said he gave me two record albums.
Hmm.
He said, "Listen to these. I know, Bill, you've always been into music. If you like them, come work with me at 99."
I think we'll continue the next show with that.
Okay.
But mention the records anyway, or you want to wait? Let the audience be in
Well,
suspense.
what we'll do is at the start of part three, because my voice is going a little
It's
bit.
okay.
At the start of part three, I will hold up those record albums
Oh, great.
and
Fantastic.
let you know what they were uh, and whether I decided to work for 99 or not. Well,
Oh,
I
okay.
guess you know that. You
Oh
know
yeah.
the answer
Well,
to that.
we'll leave it at suspense. Well, Bill,
Yeah,
this has been really great. Your stories have been great. Your history of music and all these shows. Wow, it's been quite
yeah.
really something. So let's continue this. Part three will be whenever we're ready next, and we'll continue
Okay,
on.
and I may have a full beard and long hair again. You never
You
know.
never know. By
But
then, right? Maybe
but you
sooner than
know,
that.
I urge people to check out our part one so they can see the transformation from then
That's
to here.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Bill. Thank you for
Take care,
doing this.
Dennis.
Thanks.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much. It was a pleasure. Bye bye.
Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.